Black CEO. Humiliated by billionaire's wife at Ritz Gala hours. Later. $5. 9. Vanished. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Who the hell do you think you are? The words cracked across the Ritz-Carlton ballroom like a whip, loud enough to slice through the orchestra's velvet hum and freeze every clink of crystal midair. Heads turned in unison. Conversations collapsed. 100 carefully curated smiles stalled under the chandelier's gold light. At the center of the long banquet table sat a black woman in a sleek black gown, posture straight, hands folded calmly at her place setting. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't even moved. Across from her, a blonde woman in a white evening dress leaned forward, finger extended, arm rigid, with authority practiced over decades of being obeyed. "This is a private table," the woman snapped. "Not some place you wander into because you feel entitled." A ripple of nervous laughter skittered down the table, thin, uncertain, eager to align with power. Phones began to rise, subtle at first, then bold, their lenses glinting like small black eyes hungry for spectacle. Behind the seated woman stood a young waiter in a crisp white shirt, holding a payment terminal, his face caught between confusion and dread. To the onlookers, the image wrote itself. The black woman must belong to him, a guest, a mistake, an intrusion that needed correcting. "Security," the blonde woman said sharply, not breaking eye contact. "Please remove her." The word remove landed heavier than an insult. It was a command, a verdict, the kind spoken by people who had never been told no. The man beside her, silver-haired, tuxedo immaculate, said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence was agreement, polished by old money. The black woman slowly set her napkin down. She lifted her eyes, steady and unreadable, meeting the pointed finger still hovering inches from her face. The room waited. Breath held. Someone near the end of the table whispered, "Is this really happening?" Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Ariana Cole. "Careful," Ariana said quietly. The word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It slid across the table like ice, unnoticed by most, but enough to make the waiter behind her stiffen. The blonde woman scoffed. "Excuse me?" Ariana rose, slow, deliberate. The chair whispered against marble as she stood, smoothing the front of her gown with composed precision. Wine glasses trembled faintly as if the room itself sensed the shift. "I said," Ariana repeated, her voice even, "you should be careful who you point at." A few guests exchanged looks. Someone stopped recording, unsure. Another leaned closer, curiosity beginning to replace amusement. The blonde woman laughed, sharp and brittle. "Oh, please. I don't care who you are. You don't belong here." Ariana didn't argue. She reached into her clutch and took out her phone. That, finally, unsettled the room. Not the action itself, but the calm with which she did it. No shaking hands, no rush, just certainty. Around them, the Ritz ballroom held its breath, unaware that the moment it had framed as entertainment was about to become something else entirely. The silence didn't break right away. It thickened. Guests shifted in their seats, unsure whether they were watching a misunderstanding or the opening act of something far more dangerous. A woman near the end of the table leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Is she serious?" He didn't answer. He was too busy gauging which side of the moment would be safer to stand on. The blonde woman straightened, offended now, not challenged, but questioned. She had not spent a lifetime being obeyed to tolerate restraint from someone she had already dismissed. "Don't threaten me," she snapped, her voice rising just enough to reclaim the room. "You're already out of place. Don't make this worse for yourself." A few guests nodded reflexively. Others avoided eye contact altogether. The orchestra had stopped playing. No one remembered when. The absence of music made every breath audible, every scrape of silverware sound like judgment. Ariana remained standing. She didn't step forward. She didn't step back. She simply existed where she was, unmovable, as if the floor itself had chosen her side. "I'm not threatening you," she said calmly. "I'm advising you." That did it. The blonde woman laughed too loud, too fast. "Security," she repeated, this time turning her head, finally acknowledging the men stationed along the wall. "Why is she still here?" Two guards exchanged a glance. They started forward, professional, cautious. They had been trained for disruptions, not uncertainty. As they approached, the waiter behind Ariana instinctively stepped aside, suddenly aware that he had been standing in the wrong frame of the picture all along. Phones were fully raised now. No one pretended otherwise. This wasn't charity anymore. This was theater. One of the guards cleared his throat. "Mom," he said to Ariana, rehearsed politeness masking discomfort. "Could we speak with you for a moment?" Ariana turned her head slightly, not toward him but toward the blonde woman. "Before you touch me," she said evenly, "you might want to confirm why I'm here." The blonde woman scoffed. "Because you walked in uninvited. That's why." A murmur rippled through the table. Someone frowned. Another guest whispered, "Did she check the list?" The older man beside the blonde woman finally stirred. He leaned closer to her, voice low. "Maybe we should." She waved him off without looking. "This is embarrassing," she said sharply. "And it's taking too long." The guards hesitated. That hesitation, brief, almost imperceptible, shifted the room again. Ariana reached for her phone. Not hurried, not dramatic, just inevitable. She didn't dial right away. She glanced around the table, meeting eyes that had moments ago been amused, now calculating. "This," she said softly, "is the part where everyone realizes they've misjudged the situation." The blonde woman's smile tightened. "You're delusional." Ariana finally tapped her screen. Across the ballroom, a man near the stage checked his phone and frowned. At another table, a woman in a navy gown glanced down, then looked up sharply, scanning the room. A waiter froze mid-step, reading something twice before tucking his phone away like contraband. The ripple became a wave. "What's happening?" someone whispered. The blonde woman felt it before she understood it. The shift. The subtle withdrawal of attention. The way people stopped looking with her and started looking at Ariana instead. She took a step back, instinctively reclaiming space. "Enough," she said, her voice suddenly thin. "Remove her, now." No one moved. Ariana slipped her phone back into her clutch. "You see," she said quietly, "this room runs on assumptions. Tonight, you chose the wrong one. And for the first time since the gala began, the blonde woman wasn't certain she was still the one in control. Control doesn't disappear all at once. It fractures." The blonde woman sensed it slipping and reacted the only way she knew how, by pressing harder. Her jaw tightened, her shoulders squared. Authority, when threatened, always tries to shout its way back into existence. "I don't care who you think you are," she said sharply, turning toward the guards again. "Do your jobs." One of the men shifted his weight. The other glanced, briefly, toward the event coordinator standing near the wall. The coordinator didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He simply looked at Ariana, then away, as if Head just remembered something inconvenient. That hesitation spread. A man 3 seats down checked his phone again. His expression changed, subtle but unmistakable. He leaned toward his wife, whispering urgently now. At the far end of the table, a woman who had laughed earlier lowered her glass, suddenly sober. The blonde woman noticed the looks, the whispers, the phones. "What is everyone staring at?" she snapped. No one answered. Ariana hadn't moved. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't explained anything. She didn't need to. The room was doing the work for her, recalibrating in real time. "This is absurd," the blonde woman said, forcing a laugh that no one returned. "You're all acting like she's." She stopped herself. The thought had arrived uninvited, unwelcome, like she matters. Ariana turned, finally addressing the table instead of the woman across from her. "It's interesting," she said calmly, "how quickly respect appears once people feel uncertain." A few guests stiffened. The words landed too close to home. You're enjoying this, the blonde woman accused, her voice cracking around the edges. You walked in here to make a scene. Ariana met her gaze. No, I walked in here because I was invited. By whom? The blonde woman shot back. Name them. The question hung in the air, sharp and desperate. Ariana didn't answer. That silence was louder than any name. Behind the blonde woman, her husband finally stood. He leaned in, lowering his voice. This is getting out of hand, he murmured. Let's pause. She rounded on him. Pause? Are you serious? She's humiliating us. He didn't reply. His attention had drifted past her, past the table, to the coordinator now moving quickly toward the exit, phone pressed to his ear. The blonde woman followed his line of sight. Confusion flickered across her face. Why is he leaving? She demanded. One of the guards cleared his throat again. Mom, he said carefully. Perhaps we should verify a few details. Her eyes snapped back to him. Verify what? The guard hesitated, then chose his words with surgical care. The guest list. Sponsorship notes. Seating arrangements. The blonde woman stared at him, incredulous. I am the arrangement. A ripple of discomfort passed through the staff nearby. No one contradicted her, but no one confirmed it either. Ariana reached into her clutch once more. This time she removed a slim, embossed card and placed it gently on the table. The movement was small, deliberate. The man closest to her glanced down at it, then froze. He read it once. Then again. His face drained of color. He looked up at Ariana, not with amusement now, not with curiosity, but with recognition. And fear. What is it? The blonde woman demanded, leaning forward. The man swallowed. It's her. The words barely left his mouth before the room shifted again this time, decisively. Ariana straightened, her voice still calm, still measured. This doesn't need to get louder, she said. But it will, if you insist. The blonde woman stepped back, her confidence finally faltering. For the first time that night, she realized the room was no longer behind her. It was waiting for Ariana. Silence settled differently now. Not awkward, not confused, expectant. The blonde woman stood frozen, her hand still hovering near the edge of the table, as if she could physically grab back the authority that had just slipped through her fingers. Around her, the room had subtly rearranged itself. Bodies angled away from her. Eyes drifted past her. Conversations that once orbited her presence now revolved elsewhere. Around Ariana. This is ridiculous, the blonde woman said, forcing the words out, each one thinner than the last. You're turning a charity gala into a spectacle. Ariana didn't respond immediately. She reached for her water glass, took a measured sip, then set it back down with care. No, she said. That happened before I stood up. A few guests shifted in their seats. Someone inhaled sharply. The truth of it landed with quiet violence. The man who had read the card, still pale, cleared his throat. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should all take a moment. The blonde woman rounded on him. Don't patronize me. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. His eyes were fixed on Ariana now, like a man who had just realized he was standing too close to the edge of something deep. The guards stepped back just one pace, but it was enough. Their posture changed from enforcement to observation. They were no longer waiting for orders. They were waiting for clarity. Ariana stood in the center of it all, composed, unhurried. She glanced around the table once more, meeting eyes that now dropped quickly, ashamed or afraid, or suddenly polite. You see, she said calmly, this is why I prefer privacy. The blonde woman's voice rose again, brittle with strain. You're enjoying this. Ariana finally looked directly at her. No, I'm correcting it. A pause. Then, quieter. There's a difference. The older man, her husband, shifted beside her. Let's end this, he said under his breath. Please. She turned to him, incredulous. And what? She walked in here and we miscalculated, he interrupted, sharper now. Enough. That word enough had weight, not the performative kind, the kind spoken when damage control begins. Across the ballroom, the coordinator returned, face tight, nodding once toward Ariana from a distance. It wasn't deferential, it was confirming. A woman 2 tables over whispered, She's the principal. Another voice, barely audible, She owns the stake. The whispers moved faster now, no longer restrained by disbelief. They carried names, numbers, context, each fragment assembling a picture far larger than the room itself. The blonde woman felt it closing in. "This is my event," she said weakly. "My family is hosting." Ariana finished for her. "Yes." Ariana reached into her clutch again, withdrawing her phone. This time, she didn't look at the screen. She simply held it. "Hosting," she continued evenly, "doesn't mean controlling." The blonde woman took a step back, bumping into her chair. The sound echoed loud, graceless. "What do you want?" she demanded. The question surprised even her. Ariana considered it for a moment. "I wanted an evening of good faith," she said. "Mutual respect. That was the intention." She gestured subtly toward the room. "You made that impossible." The blonde woman opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever argument she had rehearsed her entire life for moments like this, status, lineage, influence, none of it applied anymore. Ariana's voice softened, but only slightly. "This doesn't need to get uglier." The man with the card nodded immediately. "Of course not." Several others echoed him. "No, agreed. Let's move on." "Move on from her." The blonde woman stood alone now, abandoned by momentum, by loyalty, by the room itself. Ariana slipped her phone back into her clutch. "Good," she said. "Then we're done here." She turned not to leave, not yet, but to face the table one last time. "For future reference," she added calmly, "the fastest way to reveal power is to misuse it." The room absorbed the lesson in silence, and somewhere beneath the chandeliers, something irreversible had already begun. The reveal never came with an announcement. It arrived the way real power always does, quietly, and all at once. Ariana didn't raise her phone. She didn't speak into it. She simply tapped the screen once, then let her arm fall naturally back to her side. To anyone watching closely, it looked underwhelming, almost disappointing, until the room began to react. At the far end of the ballroom, a man in a tailored navy suit stood abruptly, chair scraping loudly against marble. He glanced around as if confirming he wasn't the only one who had just received the same message. He wasn't. Phones vibrated across the tables, not all at once, but close enough. A staggered rhythm. A private alert, moving faster than whispers ever could. A woman near the window frowned at her screen, then whispered, "That can't be right." Her companion leaned in, read it, and went very still. The blonde woman noticed the change. The way people were no longer looking at Ariana directly, but at each other. The way faces tightened, calculations running behind eyes trained for numbers, not apologies. "What did you do?" she demanded. Ariana didn't answer her. Instead, she turned to the man who had read the card earlier. "If you'd be so kind," she said calmly. He nodded immediately, too quickly. "Of course." He cleared his throat, standing now, drawing attention without meaning to. "There seems to be a development." The word development rippled through the room, sharp with implication. "Development?" the blonde woman scoffed. "This is absurd." Her husband checked his phone again, more urgently this time. His face tightened. "This isn't absurd," he murmured. "This is." He stopped himself. Ariana finally spoke again, her voice steady, unraised. "As of 9 minutes ago, all pending commitments tied to the Meridian Group have been suspended." A pause. Someone gasped. "That includes the bridge financing," Ariana continued, almost conversational. "The underwriting support, and the hospitality extension scheduled for next quarter." The blonde woman stared at her. "You can't do that." "I already have," Ariana replied. The words didn't land like a threat. They landed like a fact. The man beside the blonde woman stiffened. "What does she mean, suspended?" A man across the table answered quietly, without looking up from his phone. "She means the deal's frozen." Another voice joined in. "The lenders are pulling back. And the insurers," someone added. "They're reassessing exposure." The blonde woman's breath came faster now. "This is some kind of misunderstanding." Ariana met her eyes. "No, this is the cost of one." She turned slightly, addressing the table at large. "You see, reputational risk isn't theoretical, it's procedural." And tonight she glanced around the room, created a paper trail. The coordinator approached, careful now, deferential in a way that hadn't existed an hour ago. He leaned toward Ariana. "Miss Cole," he said softly, "we've been advised to accommodate any requests you may have." Ariana nodded once. "Thank you." The blonde woman took a step back, bumping into her chair again. This time, no one moved to help her. "You can't just erase us," she said, her voice cracking despite herself. "My family is leveraged," Ariana finished calmly. Heavily, the word hung there. Leverage. The husband looked at Ariana now, really looked at her. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. Ariana considered him for a moment. Long enough. Around them, conversations fractured into urgent whispers. Numbers were exchanged. Names texted. Calls attempted and unanswered. A man near the bar muttered, "5.9 billion, as if saying it aloud might make it smaller. It didn't. The blonde woman's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is because of what I said?" Ariana didn't hesitate. "No." She paused, then added, "This is because of what you assumed." Silence followed. Not confusion, not anticipation. Acceptance. Ariana slipped her phone back into her clutch. "For the record," she said, her tone neither cruel nor kind, "I didn't come here to end anything." She looked around the room once more, eyes steady. "I came here to see who I was dealing with." She turned away then, finally, leaving behind a table full of people staring at the ruins of a future they had lost before dessert was served. Power, once revealed, doesn't shout. It moves. The ballroom hadn't erupted into chaos. That was the most unsettling part. There were no raised voices, no dramatic exits, no security scrambling to restore order. Instead, the collapse unfolded with surgical precision. Quiet, methodical, irreversible. Ariana didn't issue commands. She didn't need to. Across the room, phones were no longer props for gossip. They were tools. Calls were placed in hushed corners. Messages were typed, erased, typed again. Men and women who had built careers on controlling outcomes now stared at screens they could no longer influence. One of the Meridian Group's senior advisors stood near the bar, whispering urgently. "No, listen to me," he said into his phone. "We need time. We just need." He stopped, shoulders slumping. "Yes, I understand." He hung up slowly, as if the weight of the call had settled into his bones. At the table, Ariana's presence had become a fixed point. People oriented themselves around her without realizing it, lowering their voices when she glanced their way, straightening their posture when she moved. The coordinator returned again, flanked by a man in a dark suit who hadn't been there before. Legal, discreet, expensive. "Miss Cole," the man said, offering a respectful nod. "Your counsel is on the line. They're asking how you'd like to proceed." Ariana considered this for a moment, then shook her head slightly. "They know how," she said. "Let them finish." The blonde woman watched this exchange from the edge of the table, face pale now, eyes darting between people who refused to meet her gaze. "Finish what?" she demanded. No one answered her. Instead, the man with the navy suit spoke again, reading directly from his screen. "Effective immediately," he said quietly. "All strategic partnerships with Meridian Group entities are under review." Under review? The phrase sounded benign. Corporate. Harmless. It wasn't. "That includes hospitality contracts," another voice added. "Venue sponsorships, foundation affiliations, and credit lines," someone said. "Those are tightening." The blonde woman's husband closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, as if hoping the room would look different. It didn't. "This will take time to untangle," he said carefully. "We can talk. We can negotiate." Ariana finally looked at him. "Negotiation assumes leverage," she replied. "You don't have any left." The truth of it spread faster than fear. A man who had laughed earlier stood abruptly, gathering his things. "We should probably go," he murmured to his wife. She nodded, already halfway out of her chair. Others followed, subtle at first. Then obvious. Chairs pushed back, excuses murmured. The gravitational pull of the table weakened as people distanced themselves from what it now represented. Reputational risk. The blonde woman stood alone. "This is unbelievable," she said, her voice hollow. "Over one misunderstanding?" Ariana didn't correct her. Misunderstanding was a comfortable lie. It suggested accident, innocence. This wasn't that. Across the room, a screen flickered as a staff member updated the evening's agenda. The Meridian Group logo disappeared, replaced by a generic placeholder. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. The man in the dark suit leaned closer to Ariana. "It's done," he said quietly. "The withdrawals are cascading." Ariana nodded. "Good." She turned slightly, scanning the room one last time. People avoided her eyes now, not out of disrespect, but out of recognition. They had witnessed the mechanics of real power, and it unsettled them. The blonde woman sank back into her chair, finally silent. Ariana picked up her clutch. "For what it's worth," she said calmly, addressing no one in particular, "this didn't have to be public." She paused, then added, "But some lessons don't survive privacy." With that, she stepped away from the table, not hurried, not triumphant, leaving behind a ballroom still glittering under chandeliers that now illuminated something far less beautiful. The cost of assuming the wrong person was small. The collapse didn't announce itself. It spread. At first, it moved quietly through the room, like a draft slipping under doors. Phones vibrated again, not with confusion this time, but confirmation. Alerts stacked. Headlines formed in fragments before they were finished sentences. A man near the exit whispered, "It's live." Another checked a financial feed and exhaled sharply. "They're halting trading." The words traveled faster than decorum could contain them. "Halting what?" someone asked. "The Meridian Holding Company," came the reply. "Liquidity freeze. Exposure review." A woman who had been smiling an hour earlier now clutched her clutch like a life raft. "That's not possible," she said. "They're solid." No one answered her. Across the ballroom, a screen near the stage flickered again. Not the agenda this time, news. A scrolling banner caught a few eyes, then many. Meridian Group faces sudden withdrawals amid partnership review. The blonde woman saw it too. For a moment, she didn't react. Her mind refused the information, clinging to the old order where names protected her and proximity to wealth guaranteed immunity. Then her phone rang. She didn't answer it. It rang again. And again. Her husband glanced at the screen, then away, as if looking directly at it might finalize what was happening. "We should step outside," he said quietly. She shook her head. "No, this is ridiculous." But the room had already stepped away from her. People who had leaned toward her earlier now turned their backs, forming new clusters. The social gravity had reversed. She was no longer a center, she was a liability. A man from one of the banks approached cautiously, his tone apologetic but firm. "Given the circumstances," he said, "we're going to need to reassess our position." Her voice rose. "You can't just walk away." He didn't argue. "We already have." Nearby, a donor whispered, "I don't want my name anywhere near this." Another replied, "Too late." Screenshots are circulating. The phrase, "screenshots are circulating," carried a different kind of threat now. Permanent. Unforgiving. Ariana watched none of this directly. She stood near the edge of the room, partially turned away, speaking quietly with the coordinator. Her posture was relaxed, finished. The contrast was devastating. The blonde woman finally stood, chair tipping back with a sharp crack that drew unwanted attention. "This isn't over," she said, her voice brittle. "You don't get to do this to us." Ariana didn't turn around. Someone else answered instead. "It is over." The voice belonged to a man who had once needed the Meridian Group. He didn't anymore. The blonde woman looked around desperately, searching for an ally, a familiar face willing to meet her eyes. She found none. What she saw instead was distance measured, intentional, protective. She was alone in a room full of people. Her husband leaned in, his voice low, urgent. "We need to leave. Now." She shook her head again, slower this time. "They'll fix it," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "They always do." But outside the ballroom, the world was already correcting. By the time the first guests reached the lobby, phones were buzzing with confirmation. Credit lines paused. Insurance partners suspended coverage. A scheduled announcement for the following week quietly disappeared from every calendar. By the time the valet brought the car around, the number had a shape. 5.9 billion. It wasn't gone yet, not entirely, but it was no longer theirs to command, and everyone who understood money understood what that meant. Inside, the orchestra resumed, tentative, out of obligation rather than celebration. The music felt wrong now, too light for a room carrying this much consequence. A server cleared half-empty glasses from the table where the Meridian family had once sat in confidence. The gesture was mundane. Final. Ariana picked up her coat. As she walked toward the exit, conversations fell away in her wake. Not because she demanded silence, but because no one trusted themselves to speak correctly in the presence of someone who had just rewritten the hierarchy without raising her voice. At the doorway, she paused briefly. Not to look back, but to allow the room to understand what had just happened. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't spectacle. It was accountability. Behind her, the blonde woman sank back into her chair, phone still vibrating in her hand, the sound now unbearable. She stared at the screen as if it might offer mercy. It didn't. The gala continued on paper. Donations were pledged, speeches resumed, but the illusion had shattered, and everyone in that room would remember exactly where they were when it did. By morning, the gala was already a memory curated, edited, reframed. The photos that survived were careful ones. Smiles, crystal, candlelight, the kind of images meant to preserve prestige. But the story didn't live in photographs anymore. It lived in numbers, in filings, in quiet calls that went unanswered. Financial desks picked it up first, not with outrage, with curiosity. Why would this deal freeze overnight? Why would $5.9 billion shift without warning? The answers came in pieces. A withdrawn guarantee here, a paused credit facility there. An insurance rider quietly pulled at 6:12 a.m. By the time the market opened, analysts had stopped asking if and started asking how far. Meridian Group's leadership issued a statement just after sunrise. Vague, defensive, confident in tone but hollow underneath. Temporary reassessment. Routine review. No cause for concern. No one believed it. By mid-morning, board members were distancing themselves. One resigned, citing personal reasons. Another declined comment entirely. A third removed Meridian from his bio before lunch. Reputation moved faster than capital. At 10:30, a prominent charity quietly updated its website. Meridian's name vanished from the donor wall. No explanation. No announcement. Just absence. By noon, the absence was everywhere. Across the city, people who had never met Ariana Cole felt the consequences of her decision. Contractors received delayed payment notices. Junior partners were told to prepare contingency plans. Assistants were instructed to cancel travel, postpone meetings, lower visibility. Inside Meridian's offices, the mood shifted from denial to triage. The blonde woman sat in her kitchen, untouched coffee cooling beside her phone. She had spent the night scrolling, refreshing, calling. By morning, the calls had stopped connecting. Her name trended briefly, not as a headline, but as a footnote. Screenshots, short clips, a single phrase repeated in comment sections she didn't recognize. That's her. She watched the narrative form without her. The woman who had once controlled rooms now couldn't shape a sentence. Her husband spoke little. When he did, it was practical. Logistics, damage control. Words like liquidity and exposure entered their conversations where comfort used to be. By afternoon, the number stabilized. $5.9 billion wasn't gone, not yet, but it was no longer theirs to move freely. It sat locked behind conditions and clauses and reviews that could take months, or years, or forever. Across town, Ariana's day was unremarkable. She attended a short meeting, approved 2 routine items, declined an interview request without comment. Her assistant slid a folder across the table mid-afternoon. Public reaction is mixed, she said carefully. Ariana glanced at the summary, then closed it. It always is. At 4 o'clock, she signed a transfer order. Not large, by her standards, but intentional. Funds redirected to a housing initiative Meridian had once pledged to support, but never fully funded. No press release followed. The action spoke for itself. By evening, the story had settled into something simpler than scandal, something heavier, consequence. In private dining rooms and executive lounges, people replayed the moment in their minds, not the collapse, but the beginning. The finger pointed, the order given, the assumption made. They imagined themselves there. What would they have done? Most didn't like the answer. The blonde woman avoided mirrors that night, not out of shame, but because she didn't recognize the person staring back. Someone smaller, someone louder, someone who had mistaken certainty for power. And in that realization, something else cracked. Across the city, Ariana Cole looked out over the skyline as dusk settled. She didn't feel triumph. She never did. What she felt was quiet. The kind that comes after correction. Tomorrow, the world would keep turning. Deals would be rebuilt. Names would fade. Others would rise. But the lesson would remain. Because the most expensive mistakes aren't always financial. Sometimes they're personal. The story didn't end with applause. It never does. There were no victory speeches, no public statements, no carefully crafted quotes about justice or empowerment. Ariana Cole returned to her life the same way she had lived it, quietly, deliberately, without needing the world to agree with her. Weeks later, the gala was barely mentioned. Another event replaced it. Another headline. Another distraction. But in boardrooms and private conversations, the moment lingered, not because of the money, but because of the miscalculation. People remembered the beginning more than the end. The pointed finger, the command spoken without hesitation, the ease with which someone decided another human being didn't belong. They remembered how little it took to start the collapse. Ariana never corrected the record. She never clarified who she was or what she owned. Those who mattered already knew. Those who didn't need to. One afternoon, as she signed off on quarterly reports, her assistant paused. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked carefully. "How it happened?" Ariana didn't look up right away. When she did, her expression was calm, resolved. "I regret that it was necessary," she said, "not that it was done." She closed the folder and stood, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. "They didn't know who I was," she continued, "but they knew I was a person. That should have been enough." Outside, the skyline glowed in the fading light built by hands unseen, sustained by power rarely questioned. Ariana turned away from the window. The world would keep testing people like her. It always did. But now, somewhere beneath the chandeliers and assumptions, a lesson had been planted. Dignity doesn't require permission, and power, real power, never asks to be seen.